This is your last day in here, right? James coming
James
back
is
from
back
vacation
tomorrow.
Fresh off his almost a week, I would guess, down in the Florida Keys. James will be back, and a shout-out to Kurt Gerals, for being in here and handling things this almost past week. All right, I'll get to the storylines, and I'll get, obviously, to the guest list coming up in a minute. I do want to start with the Pacers last night, and I know a lot of you have said, hey, it was kind of a discombobulated this and a messed up that, and, it wasn't slick, and it didn't feel great. No. That's what you do professionally. That's what I was talking about yesterday. When you come off something like that, we'll talk to Chris Denari a little bit later on about the numbers that the indie market and then the nation looked at as far as the in-season basketball tournament, the first ever in the NBA, and that championship game this past Saturday. But what we talked about yesterday was the expectation out of this team moving forward, that being the Pacers, and what did you expect? And you may have been disappointed, certainly, at that loss this past Saturday night to the Lakers. But you erase that because the stats don't matter anyway, and then you move forward. And what you did not want to see happen was them stumble. And we have seen some disappointing outcomes so far this year. You didn't want to see them stumble in that game in Detroit last night. And you got a team that's now lost 20 consecutive in the Pistons. You don't want that to be on the resume, because that would help erase so much of the goodwill that this Pacer team built with you over the past week. I mean, think about it. This is a Tuesday. Last week at this time, we were talking about how incredible Gainbridge Fieldhouse was, and that win over the Celtics. Now, how enjoyable that it was. Now, the Pacers re-announcing their national presence as it stood on TNT. We were talking about that last week, and then Thursday, you fast forward a little bit more to that Milwaukee game. And doing that in the semifinal of that NBA first ever in-season tournament. All that was great, and then obviously Saturday night, not so much. Not so much. Yeah, I talked about the Lakers. The one thing out of the Lakers, and I know that everybody's sick and tired of LeBron James and everybody's sick and tired of the Lakers, but the one thing that impressed me more than anything else is the professionalism in which they approached and then participated. Because they really didn't have – the Pacers had all this to gain. Looking for the national spotlight, looking for a level of interest, having everybody talking about them, whether it's Tyrese Halliburton or anybody else. Everybody nationally was talking about what can the Pacers do to not just sustain, but what they can do to raise the bar. What can they do to get better? And you had all that. And then on Saturday night, unfortunately, you didn't play well, but the other team did play well. The other team really had zero to gain. Zero to gain whatsoever, because they get all of that anyway. They get all of that conversation every single day. And you just didn't want to see the Pacers last night go in Detroit and lose any of that ground. And then have us talking about that. Why did that happen? And you know what? They didn't. Now, it was not a scintillating performance by any stretch. Let's just face it. That was a Monday night in Detroit. But again, professionally speaking, if you're going to help raise the bar, there are a lot of ways you can raise the bar on the expectations of this team. Certainly consistently playing better, consistently, as we've talked about, defense, doing all these things better, but it is also a part of the professionalism where you go on the road and you're going to go from all the gala, all the spotlight, all that was Las Vegas, being under that national spotlight, and then you're going to go to Detroit, a team that's lost 19 straight going into last night. And a team that hadn't played well, a team that's been awful in an environment of which, whatever. And you had to go in there, and you had to be professional, and you had to perform, meaning you had to go in there and get a win. And that's exactly what they did. So to me, I was impressed with that last night. That's exactly what I was looking for. 131-123 was the final. If you look back at it, very consistent offensive effort from quarter to quarter, 33, 33, 32, and 33 to close it out. And also the way that you look at it, they had a big defensive-looking effort. 25 for the Pistons in the second quarter. I think they closed out with the Pistons with 20. But you also got a little bit more last night, and you've got a re-spark of Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin, who obviously comes off the bench, and people say that the growth of Mathurin's game is going to be stunted because of the way that Rick Carlisle either plays or does not play him sometimes, the amount of clock that he gets or doesn't get. And then last night he goes for 37 and 8, and that was the big deal. Among everybody else on that team, that was the big deal. Now, again, it is kind of a step up ladder-wise each and every game, each and every week, each and every month here. And that was one for Benedict Mathurin. That was one for a guy that obviously you feel, coming off of last year where he was so impressive, you just feel that you would like to not necessarily have, 30.7 rebound nights. I don't think anybody expects that. But to have a profound effect on each game is what you're looking for. And you can call him out, want him to be better defensively, but I think you could call everybody out and want everybody to be better defensively. Now, last night, and I know what you're going to say, Detroit's terrible, and that, no. That is professional growth in a team. Because remember, you don't have to go too far back with home games, mind you. You don't have to go too far back to see where that growth was not there, to wonder what the hell just happened. And last night, that's what they did in Detroit with that win. They get the Milwaukee Bucks on the road coming up on Wednesday. We'll see how that goes, too. And obviously, if there is a December game in Milwaukee, that Milwaukee, an elite-level team that obviously is playing for and looking for a championship, if they're going to be engaged, it is going to be that one for a myriad of reasons. And remember, all that great talk that the Pacers got coming off of Thursday was turned around, and that was a lot of negativity in terms of how everybody talked about the Bucks. And I'm not just talking about the Tyrese Halliburton of Dame time, looking at the fake watch on the wrist after the game. I'm just talking about what was said about Milwaukee, and in general, it also involved Damian Lillard. It was Damian Lillard may not be the piece that is necessary here, because when he's trying to get going, then that takes away from Giannis either keeping going or obviously you don't have more than one basketball. And I talked about this with Andrew Neesmith, or we talked about this with Aaron Neesmith on Friday's show, and Aaron had mentioned this. The last 8 minutes, Giannis touched the ball maybe 3 times. I think he knocked down 2 shots, maybe had a rebound in there, but literally for the last 8 minutes, Aaron Neesmith did as good a job as you can do, certainly on paper, against Giannis. But the thing that he told us on Friday was he went to the corner. It was like a tell. We had talked about the film rounders, and you let me know if there is a tell when you know that maybe an elite level player like that is not going to come at you as he normally might. And he said he ran to the corner and kind of hung out there. And Lillard was the guy that had the ball. Lillard was the guy that was trying to make the plays. And there was a lot of negativity surrounding that after the game. Now, again, we only heard all the positivity in terms of the Pacers, but there was a lot of conversation about, you know what, you had Holiday here, and that seemed to work a lot better, and this, Lillard needs the ball, has to have the ball. So if there's going to be a motivated team that's at an elite level in the Eastern Conference on a Wednesday night in December, that is certainly going to be the Milwaukee Bucks, without a question. And big time for the Pacers last night, just to show what they can do. Loaded show. I'll get down to business with you coming up in a minute. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, last night, as I mentioned, a win for the Pacers on the road in Detroit. 23 points and 8 rebounds for number 33, Myles Turner, who joins us now. Myles, thank you for the time. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Got a nice little off day here in Milwaukee, so I'm in the hotel with it.
You guys, how much needed is an off day for this group after what you guys have gone through in the past week?
Yeah, man. I mean, the physical thing is one thing, but I think the emotional and the mental aspect of things is a thing that people underestimate. We traveled. We were in Vegas for, almost a week, and, we have another week and a half road trip coming up here with a couple back-to-backs, and, it's tough on the body, man, but, we love it, and, we wouldn't trade for anything else in the world right now.
It's Myles Turner who joins us. A little bit about that emotional and that physical part away from the court, because you guys are on the move. You guys have all these media responsibilities like it really is a postseason. How much did you learn from that, and how taxing, how tiring was that just off the floor in general for you this past week?
I think if anything, it was good to get that, playoff-like experience. I think the league did a good job with this in-season tournament and just trying to simulate and replicate, what the playoff feel was and bring excitement to the games with, the different jerseys and courts and whatnot. But, no, it's definitely taxing, man, to say the least. I mean, just to be one of the fortunate teams to be able to go out west and, represent our teams out there. It was a great thing, but it definitely tiring just with all the travel and whatnot, being in so many different cities in a certain amount of days. But, like I said, we're not complaining. We're loving the exposure. We're loving how much it's bringing us together as a team. And, it's still all the fun.
I talked to Aaron on Friday, and he had mentioned how different it was for you guys. You go from Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Boston a week ago Monday, and then you kind of go to a really kind of looked like and sounded like a bubble type of situation for that semifinal against the Bucks this past Thursday. How different was that? How quickly or how much time did it take for you to acclimate to going from the Gainbridge Fieldhouse crowd that you had on your side to really not a lot of noise in general whatsoever?
We definitely had to acclimate quickly. I think the biggest thing is you're still playing some top tier, teams, especially in the Eastern Conference. And, even like last night, it could have been very easy for us to kind of be like a trap game or a letdown game. But, your mental focus had to be so sharp just because of, what was at stake. We're still very early in the season. We're still only 20-something games in right now. So the season's young. We still have a lot more to go. So you can't, come in this time of the year and drop those games.
Is Myles Turner with us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I mentioned there has been a lot of growth, and certainly I thought that that entire tournament, and especially the last week, was fantastic for you, the organization, you and your teammates. But how big was last night, too? Because that showed a level of professionalism that you also has to have. I mean, you go from Vegas to Detroit. They lost 19 straight. You mentioned a trap game type of situation. How important was it to go in there and make sure you don't get caught up in that trap and, be as professional as possible, which is exactly what it takes to get to the level in which you guys want to be?
You repeat that, JMV? It's not my bad.
No, it was to me that was a professional performance last night, because normally you mentioned the trap game circumstances. It'd be easy to get caught up in that, and it takes a level of certainly a higher level of play on the floor, but you also have to raise your level of professionalism. I thought last night was a professional win by you guys.
Absolutely, that's exactly how I have to look at it. We came in and we did our jobs. I think that. It's easy to look at a team like Detroit and say, okay, they've lost 19 games in a row, so it might be an easy win. But, I've been in this league long enough to know that that's never the case. It's still a hungry team, still an NBA team that's looking at all the success that we've had over the past couple of weeks and, wants a little bit of what we have. So they're always going to come at you with as hard as they can and with what they got. So they played us tough, until about that fourth quarter when we were finally able to break away. But, there were times last night where, we had to break out of that little like West Coast feel. We're still up at 3 a.m. because our bodies are on West Coast time and, still trying to get adjusted. But like I said, you can try to make all the excuses in the world. You still have to go out there and do your job.
Yeah, it's Myles Turner with us too. And I also talked about the Lakers. I thought the Lakers played about as professionally as you can, because they go through this stuff like all the time. All the spotlight, all the notoriety, all the conversation, all the mentions. And they went out there and went straight at you from the opening tip. Is there anything you guys can learn, even in that loss to the Lakers? Anything you take away from that game?
Well, if anything, it's just the experience levels they have in their team. And they came out on a mission. I think, They came out very aggressive from the jump, but even with everything they did, it was still a single-digit game, most of that game. We didn't shoot the ball well. We didn't play our best brand of basketball. We didn't even get out and run like we wanted to, and it was still, close pretty much the entire time. So it was very encouraging, for us to go in there. There's no moral victories in a championship game like that. We're not trying to say, there's no participation trophy, but if anything, it was a morale boost to, our team just because of, how tough we fought with them the entire game, knowing that we didn't even play our best basketball.
Myles, naturally you're going to be frustrated, but you look like you were carrying a heavy weight of frustration when you fouled out of that game. What was all going through your mind at that point in time when you walked back to the bench? Did you have to go someplace and compose yourself for a minute after that?
Yeah, that's all that was. I kind of just went to the tunnel and just kind of had to, take a couple deep breaths, man. I think for me personally, it felt like a personal failure, just being one of the guys that had been on that stage, before and, having the performance that I did. It was tough to play the entirety of that game pretty much in foul trouble. And I think that I saw some stats of the game. That was the most foul calls in the game since, the 1940s. So it was 58 foul calls, in both ways. So being on the receiving end of that was definitely very tough, not being able to show up for my team, the way they needed me to. And, I always take a heavy weight. I'm one of the main guys on this team, one of the leaders on this team. So whenever my performance, isn't up to par, usually – the team doesn't, we don't win the games that I think we should win. And that was definitely the case, then. So, I didn't, it definitely weighed heavy on me, but you had to move on because we had a game literally in 2 days. So, that's a good thing. And the beauty of the league is that you can have a bad game to bounce back, like we did last night. So, we'll definitely be back. We know that, we're still preparing for the end of the season, get into the playoffs. We see the Lakers 2 more times. So, you can't hang your head for too long.
Emotionally speaking, and you're talking about your composure after that game, after you fouled out, would you have handled that differently 3-4 years ago? Are you different now as far as your growth and your maturation than you were 3 or 4 years ago, and how you would have handled that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it would have been a few years ago. It probably would have been those things where there's no talking to me. Like there's nothing you could have told me. There's no pats on the backs and whatnot, whatsoever. I just would have been in a dark place for a couple of days. But I took it on the chin. I took, you hear all the comments. You see, people turn on you, but at the same time, it's not really. I'm not really in the business of that. I think that when you're at that stage and you've been at that stage before, you kind of know what to expect for the next time. And, that's what I'm here for. I'm excited for the get back. It's very easy just to lay down and quit, but that's never really been a part of who I am or, my makeup. So, like I said, I'm excited for the next opportunity, if anything. I think I've definitely matured in a much better spot and, I'm trying to the maturation level and, supersede that and just show it to the rest of the team.
Yes, Myles Turner with us. Have your expectations now grown from this past week? And I know you had expectations, high-level ones anyway, but have they grown from what you have seen with you and your teammates be able to do, Boston, Milwaukee, being in that final? Has it grown in the last week as well?
I'm not sure if grown is the word for it. I obviously had high expectations, heading into the season itself. I think that, we're capable of beating, some of these top teams just because of our style of play and, our confidence level. So, I definitely still expect us to compete at a very high level, but, I wasn't really surprised by our wins as much as everybody else, outside of Indiana was surprised, maybe even a few people in Indiana. I think those are, we're very capable of competing at a high level in this Eastern Conference. So, my expectations are the same as they were before the season started. That's just to, get into this postseason, 1, and then 2, make some noise in the postseason while we're there.
What do you like with the mix personnel-wise of this team? Just a couple, 2 or 3 things that you really like. I mean, obviously Tyrese is the top of that list, but what else do you like about the mix of this team right now?
We're just very well-rounded. We have a lot of depth. We have guys that I think that, came from different teams and didn't get the role that they deserved, and they were to come here and just carve out a role for themselves, carve out a niche, and we're clicking on all cylinders right now. Now, the thing about us is how you handle success. I mean, it's easy to have that early season success, but how do you maintain that throughout an entire season? That's where the maturation level of this team has to grow. It's just that it's easy just to get up for the games where you play the Bostons, Milwaukee's, and when you play like the lower tier teams, how do you handle business? Kind of like we did last night. You have to be able to do that night in and night out. So. Just going back to your question, that the depth of our team is something I definitely love. I love the fact that, how resilient we are, just how fast we play, like the entire game, and how we're starting to kind of just get better in little categories, like our defensive, side of things, game by game.
Yeah, we saw you guys certainly get better defensively against elite-level players. I mean, you saw Boston, you saw Milwaukee. What are some of the things you need to sustain defensively, both you and your teammates, to get to that higher level and get to a point or in a place where you want to be defensively as we move along in the season?
Oh, just consistency. I think we go in spurts of certain games where we play some good defense. So it's putting that together for 4 quarters. We know you're not going to hold a team scoreless, but, just trying to – I think the goal of an NBA team is to hold a team under 25 points, a quarter, or even 30 points a quarter, just with how many points guys are scoring nowadays. But just that improvement, and not going back to bad habits and resorting back to old habits and whatnot. I think just our effort of one thing is just been starting to improve.
Is this the most fun you're having in any season so far with this group and this team, the way that it looks right now compared to the past?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was in a similar situation, maybe like Oladipo's first year, where we weren't expected to do too much, and we banded together, and obviously, had a decent playoff, experience that first round. But it's starting to have the same likings of that group. We're young, we're fast, we're exuberant, playing at a high level. Now it's just a matter of putting together games and continue to do it at a consistent level. God willing, everybody stays healthy, and we keep our nose to the grindstone. So very special things, could very well happen this season.
What do we do besides talk to me on your day off, which I'm sure that Chrissy had to force you into doing right now, and I appreciate that, but probably not on your itinerary. What are you doing on your day off in preparation for tomorrow night in Milwaukee?
Typically on a day off, I like to get outside, just walk around, and maybe just even if I just walk a block around the hotel to get some sun, chill a little bit. I can't really do my Legos on the road. It's kind of hard to transport them without breaking everything, so that's more of like a home, kind of thing. But yeah, man, catch up on some shows and just kick it. I mean, today it's a very slim chance to leave the hotel. I'm actually pretty tired, so I'll just be in the room, just chilling, just catching up with the family and just staying off my feet.
When you were asked about the whole Lego thing last week, you had mentioned, I think the key word here was build and not play, right? You build, but you don't play when you were asked that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Such a negative connotation when it comes to the Legos at times because, still a grown-ass man at the end of the day and, playing with toys. That's kind of how people would view it in a sense. But I have a whole vision for what I do with, like, all of my Legos and whatnot. It takes a lot of time and effort and patience to sit there and build thousands of pieces of Legos and then have it all come together and be one big picture. And, most of my Lego sets are back home in Austin. And, I work on a bunch of them here in Indy throughout the season and ship them back there. And I put them all together in one, but that's been like a 10-year process at that. And, there's only a certain group of people can actually appreciate what I do and the others will see it, in a different light. But, I just don't really, I kind of tuned out the noise, a long time ago.
I've got the Seinfeld set still in the box right now, ready to be built right now. So I don't have the attention to detail. I've always assumed this with this, and then you can go older school, Myles, with models and things like that. It would have to me take a great deal of attention to detail to do this and want to continue to do this. Is that what you have, that attention to detail that's necessary?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I really, if one piece is off, like I think I have OCD. Like it'll really mess me up in a sense. Like I have to make sure that everything is right where it needs to be. Everything's in the right place, and not everybody like does that. But it's, for me personally, it would drive me insane if I couldn't.
Is that your number one hobby?
Yeah, I would say so. As far as what I spend the most time on, in the off season, I really enjoy traveling. I really enjoy just like getting out of different countries and whatnot, seeing different walks of life. I'm still into yoga as well, but as far as just time spent, it's definitely into Legos.
All right, Myles Turner with us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Pacers have an off day, and they get the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm assuming the Bucks probably will be a little motivated tomorrow night. Is that your assumption too?
Yeah, they probably got a bad taste in their mouth, at such a grand stage. Not getting the dub against us probably definitely makes them feel away. But at the same time, it's an NBA game, and mean, if you can't get up to play, an Eastern Conference opponent, especially at the top, then something's wrong. But I think that we have a great game plan, going into it. Now it's just about executing that game plan.
Hey, Myles, one final thing, too, regarding the Bucs tomorrow night. What's the big difference between Lillard and Holiday, for example, with them? You've seen them twice already. I think one game without Lillard, obviously last week with Lillard. What's the big difference between the two, running the team, being a part of the team in the backcourt?
Well, when they had Drew, I think they definitely mixed things up a lot more defensively because he was so versatile and he can guard a 5-man. He can guard 1 through 5, basically. So they were able to, have a little bit of a defensive package. I think with Dame now, mixed up their offensive package because, you can't spend too much time, just on Giannis because you have a person who can go off for, 40, 50 points at any given night. So the attention to detail has to be a lot sharper. You got to pick and roll coverages. You got to mix things up as well. It's harder just to guard them one-on-one. So they're a more dynamic, offensive team, I would say. But when they had Drew, they were a more dynamic defensive team. So it was just it just was kind of it depends on what you like more. Some guys like offense, some guys like defense. And I think they both, between Drew and Dane, they both have their talents. But, I think it's glaring, what they both bring.
Yeah, no doubt. Myles Turner with us, 23 and 8 last night, and the Pacers win over the Pistons. They get Milwaukee. You can hear it right here. That is coming up tomorrow night. Myles Turner on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hey, thank Chrissy for me for putting you on here today. I appreciate that. And when you get back in town, we'll do it again soon. Thanks, Myles.
All right, I'll take it.
It's Myles Turner on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Quick break. We'll come back. Greg Rakestraw is going to join us next. Brad Spielberger's good to go today. PFF, we do not know just yet. More than likely, yeah. Right? Chris Denari coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Quick break. Back after this. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Want to cut heating bills without cutting comfort? Lower utility costs and enjoy warm and consistent comfort.
Absolutely uncalled for if I ever did that on the JMV Takeover. That's my fault. Got a second off right there. Kurt Gerald's in studio. Final day in for James. James back tomorrow. Myles Turner on the podcast, 1075thefan.com. And shout out to Chrissy, who got Myles on here on an off day in Milwaukee today. So very much, if you missed any of it, the podcast, 1075thefan.com. And the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, friend of the show. Saw him a little bit earlier here. Greg Rakestraw joins us right now. Hello, Greg. How are you doing?
Are you telling me I'm following Myles Turner on the program?
You are, yes. Yes.
And this is all of your favorite people. Myles, me, whoever else finishes tied for third.
Yeah, exactly. If George Brett were on after you, this may be the perfect day. Seriously.
I've got somebody that knows George. Let me see what I can do.
Seriously, because I have tried every single avenue. Seriously, this is like the one person I've never had on this show that I've always wanted. Seriously, one guy, and it's George Brett.
All right, JMV's White Whale. I may not make it today on the program, but let me see what I can do.
Because I don't know if you knew this or not, because I'm known as a Reds fan, which I am, but I was also a huge George Brett fan. That goes all the way back to the late 70s, and then obviously his chase of 400 back in 1980 when the Royals went to the World Series and lost to the Phillies. But, basically through the 80s and into the 90s, all I did was watch a lot of George Brett at the time. So I'm pretty good at it with George Brett.
All right. I'll file that away for future use. Good to know.
I appreciate that. All right, your weekend, you spent some of it over at Southport Fieldhouse watching the Forum Credit Union Tip-Off Classic. From what you witnessed, how were the matchups? How were the games?
I tell you what, here's who stood out to me. Fishers is really good,
yeah,
and that is without Jalen Harrelson. They're playing a couple of freshmen. They've got a talented post player in Keenan Garner. But, again, this is without the guy that was supposed to be their lead guy, and they're unbeaten. And so Fishers is really good. LN beat Fort Wayne without their starting center and Kai McGrew, who is a 6'9 sophomore. LN has scored at least 70 points in all 4 games they have played. They are really good. Was very impressed by both Braylon Mullins and Greenfield Central. As they remain undefeated, Braylon had 31, had 22 in the first half, hit a shot from three-quarter court in the opening game. Southport's not bad. Southport's record so far has been a bit of a struggle. They're 1-4, but they've got some talent there, and with Bill Zick, they'll be successful sooner rather than later at Southport. Noblesville, that played in that in those games and beat Addicts, is also a really good team. Their lone loss is Fishers, and that was last Friday. So there's a lot of depth. There is probably not a team that is as I would say, generationally good as Ben Davis was last year, but the top end of 4A locally is really deep. It's almost the exact same thing said about football. Is there that great team? No, but there are a lot of really good teams, which means that even in mid-December, I can be thinking about March. I think March is going to be really fun around here.
It's Greg Rakestraw on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So 3 wins in 6 games for Zach Hahn and CG. How disappointing has that start been for them?
It's disappointing, but at the same time, they've played a really good schedule, and they're a senior-loaded group. 7 seniors, really 5 that play in their 8-man rotation. They've got depth. They're going to be okay. And so I'm happy that Zach has gone out and played in those events and tested that team, because it is going to pay off for them at some point in time. They got knocked out by Bloomington North last year in terms of the sectional championship game. I don't think North is what they were a year ago with J.Q. Roberts down at Vanderbilt. Franklin beat Center Grove earlier this year. And, again, Franklin is no longer in the same sectional. They kind of go east, while Center Grove is in with Martinsville and Mooresville and Greenwood in the 2 Bloomington schools. So Center Grove's going to be okay. And I'm sure they're disappointed at 3-3, but I think long-term they're going to be just fine.
Oh, your impression on 5-1 Garin Catholic with a win over Heritage Hills and that Sicily kid over the weekend. I think that's also right in the Forum Tip-Off Classic. Your impression on Garin after that 5-1 start?
Well, I thought Garin was the favorite in 3A coming into the season. That does not change. And this is a team that is playing without their starting point guard in Jack Cherry, who is out due to an injury suffered during the football season. He'll return at some point in time this year. Robert Sorensen had a big game against Heritage Hills on Saturday afternoon. But again, they were a basket or two away from beating a really good Northwood team in the 3A championship game in March. So Sisley's a really good player. Heritage Hills is a solid team, but this Sisley brother probably doesn't have the talent that the older Sisley brother had around him when Heritage Hills could have made a deep run in 3A in 2020, but the pandemic got in the way. So, and it's still a young Heritage Hills team. Their best season is probably next year. So the game that you saw on Saturday afternoon, that's a game that could be a semi-state game at the 3A level. But again, I think Guerin Catholic has to be the 3A favorite at this point in the season.
I want to give a little bit of love to 5-0 Danville in 3A right now. Out of the gate playing really strong basketball. A, is that something you expected? B, is that something they can continue to do at Danville this season? Because that's an impressive start, certainly in 3A, to say the least.
Absolutely, because they did not have a single senior on their roster last year. And they're a team and a program that is made a habit of playing in regionals and into the semi-state round. And Brian Barber is quickly working his way up the all-time coaching wins list. Because of a few retirements, Brian, I want to say off the top of my head, is 11th amongst active coaches in career wins. I think he's just shy of 470 or just around it at that point in time. Danville is in this habit of getting at least like 15 wins every year. Some years they'll get more than that. We have them on Friday night when they take on Danville. That'll be a free stream on ISC Sports Network. When they take on Lebanon, that'll be a free stream on ISCSportsNetwork.com. I won't see those guys for a few more weeks. I don't think I have them until potentially the Hendricks County Tournament Final, which they could reach. I know I've got them a couple of times in February. They're good. They've got the Lawrence kid. It's a big kid. He's going to play football at IU, but as a really good basketball player, he was a basketball kid first. Was kind of late to football, is going to go that route. But knowing they returned so many pieces from last year and knowing the annual outstanding job that Brian does, no, that does not surprise me. And they're in that mix with Guerin and Heritage Hills, et cetera, in terms of being the best teams in the southern half of the bracket in 3A.
This is Greg Rakestraw on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. The Indy Classic, 1:45 to start the first game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday. Indiana State and Ball State. First, I want you to kind of break that one down for me, if you will, and then we'll get into Purdue and Arizona. And the other question I had is whether you believe, obviously this is good for Peacock, right? It is good for Peacock to have that second game on there because people are going to have that level of interest. But is it bad for the Indy Classic and the teams in general, or does it matter?
I'm not sure it matters because they're officially sold out today, John. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is the shell of the event that IU said we're too good for that. This is the event that Notre Dame said, nah, we play enough quality competition. We don't need to play in Indianapolis on a regular basis. So the fact that in year two of this event that every ticket has been sold, that's awesome. It shows the quality of Purdue over the last couple of years. And it also shows, I'm glad that Indiana State and Ball State fans are supporting their teams when they have had really good years. So obviously I am a big believer or big supporter of, hey, I want to see it on network TV or at least cable TV. I understand the economics. I mean, my goodness, I'm in the streaming business. We sell subscriptions at the ISC Sports Network as well, so I get it. But in terms of affecting the recognition of the event, if you've got good teams, if you've got desirable matchups, people will pay for it to watch it, whether it's in person or online. So to me, the big overarching theme of this event on Saturday, before there's even a first tip-off, they sold it out before we actually opened up the gates on Saturday. I think that's a heck of an accomplishment.
All right. What do you think about Arizona and the Boilers in that second game matchup?
I mean, I think it's a great test for Purdue, and I'm not trying to be the guy that doesn't enjoy all of these wins along the way. Like winning in Maui, you should enjoy that. Winning in Toronto, you should enjoy that. Whatever happens in the Big Ten, you should enjoy that. But it's hard for me to get too high or get too low on positive or negative results given how much of the focus is going to be on March. So if you are looking for a a way to try to keep you motivated as a Purdue fan. I don't think a Purdue player would need this, but a way to keep you motivated as a Purdue fan. What you're really trying to do is make sure you're in that top 4, top 8, maybe top 12, depending on how all of the other, ratings, net rankings, top 25, et cetera, because you have that carrot of getting to play your first couple of round games in Indianapolis as a top seed, with games taking place at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So if you have grown tired of, we won the Big Ten tournament, we've won the Big Ten regular season, yes, we've won this early season holiday tournament, then okay, knowing you get to make an hour drive and play in a venue you are playing games in every year at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, then there's your motivational carrot or nugget. Make sure you're in the top 4, make sure you're in the top 8. This is a great test. This is a potential Final Four level game. But again, winning these games in the regular season has not been the problem for Purdue.
It is always interesting, too, to see the formula. I think we've seen, obviously, Matt Painter's formula to this point, but with Tommy Lloyd and what he has done so far in Arizona, that formula is eerily reminiscent to that of his former boss, Mark Few, and how he put together year after year, team after team, and that level of success at Gonzaga.
Correct. And, I mean, it's Arizona. I mean, the foundation has been there now for, God, we're old, John, 35 years in terms of them being good, more years than not. And I use that specific, date because that's when they made the Final Four back in Kansas City with, Elliott and Kerr and Kenny Lofton, Tom Tolbert, Judd Bushler, parts of those teams as well. That was 35 years ago at this point. So, at Arizona, you almost have to screw it up to not be good. So I'm not trying to bag on what the new coach is doing, but no, it's and especially in day and age where, hey, you got the boosters that can fund it, you can bring them in. Arizona's going to be good more years than not.
Well, I mean, the previous guy screwed it up for himself there. So
right.
I mean, there's been some stuff screwed up. There's no doubt about that. And you're right. I just the formula, and I guess I'm talking about in terms of how you use overseas players, and then how you use the transfer portal certainly now. And Caleb Love from Carolina first, I think, stopped in Michigan and then ended up going out to Arizona. And at least at this point, he is their leading scorer.
That is a well-funded program with a history of success.
Yep.
And if you're going to play a sport that's predominantly a winter sport, I'd say Tucson, Arizona is a pretty good place to recruit to. Wouldn't you think so?
Well, let me tell you this. The film Can't Buy Me Love is still at the top of my list of one of the greatest of all time, and it was filmed in Tucson, Arizona, with Arizona as the backdrop. There's nothing wrong with that.
Do you think that Ronald McDonald Miller is a donor to the University of Arizona men's basketball program?
Yes, he is, man. I'm telling you what, it was great because, nerdy Ronald McDonald Miller did that Ronald McDonald Miller scam, but he dropped the attitude on that telescope pretty damn quick when Cindy Mancini came calling. You know what I mean? You forget about that quick.
Do you own a tic-tac-tile T-shirt, John? Because it would be perfect for your wardrobe if you don't.
Oh, man, I need it. There's no question that I need it. But I believe Clint, the actor and comedian that played that role, has been on the show a couple of different times.
Yes, he has.
Oddly enough, he is really good friends with the Gorman.
Well, then get him back on the show. Get him in town for Purdue and Arizona on Saturday.
I believe when he walked into that party, he said, did he say Clinton is in, let the fun begin, I believe?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
I was thinking that exact same line. You and I are way too eerily alike when we have these conversations about clearly what is the cinematic masterpiece of 1987.
Hey, I think Matt Painter would be very proud knowing we're talking about Can't Buy Me Love and not the actual matchup on Saturday, too, between Arizona and Purdue right there. What do you got coming up later on this week and this weekend?
All right, so let's see. Tonight I've got Lawrence Central and Attucks.
Yeah.
Thursday I get to do my annual Lanesville game. So the Lanesville girls are 11-0, a 24-game winning streak dating back to last year, defending 1A champs. They take on Crawford County. Happens to be 11-1. And then Friday night, North Central and Carmel. And then, of course, on Saturday I'm hanging out with you with the Colts and Stillers coming up at 4:30 on Saturday afternoon.
Oh, man, that's going to be a big day. We got all that going on Saturday, and then my basketball team, my 8th grade Center Grove girls, are going to back nine. I'm taking them to back nine after the game. How about that?
Oh, that's fantastic.
How about that for a coach? Would you not want me as an assistant coach?
Well, I mean, you would chastise your team for shooting anything, closer than 20 feet. So, yes, I would want you as a coach because it would be all threes, and you never have to run the actual length of the floor, just between the three-point lines, all you have to do.
It's Greg Rakestraw, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Always a pleasure, buddy. We'll see you this weekend.
See you, dude.
It's Greg Rakestraw with us. Quick one, we'll come back. Spielberger, get back with you. It may be you and me coming up after 4. We have not heard from PFF. If so, that's cool. If not, then we'll talk to Brad Spielberger, 5 o'clock hour, Chris Denari, Myles Turner earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Back with you next.
911, what's your emergency?
Por favor, necesito ayuda. Está volando y creo que me va a pegar otra vez.
I will get someone to speak with you. Please stay on the line.
Hola, tengo su ubicación. Ayuda está en camino.
Getting past a language barrier is critical when first responders help Hoosiers. That's why the State 911 Board provides special tools for non-English
Monday night, and the Pistons had lost 19 consecutive. There's no way in the world you could yak that up. Last night, no matter how you look at it, if you're unimpressed, whatever, didn't matter. That was a professional win. You don't want to lose all that was built in the past week with that in-season tournament in one incredibly bad loss to a team like the Pistons. So last night showed a sign of that professionalism. So we don't know with PFF just yet. Here's what I want you to do. If Spielberger's not here, we'll do some calls about the Pacers. Some Colts stuff coming at you as well. Whether or not Jonathan Taylor is going to play coming up this Saturday, that is a big deal and the biggest game of the year. No doubt about that Saturday afternoon here. We'll talk some Colts, maybe Brad Spielberger, and maybe not. Oh, do I still have 2 minutes here? Oh, see, I normally go at 55. Not here? Not now? Yeah. Skivvy says Silverchair was awesome. Just saw a clip of them on SNL recently from years back. Silverchair was probably forgotten about, but it was one of those playing off the whole grunge era and that particular sound. I believe they were from Australia. Popped about the same time as Eve 6, I think, with that Inside Out song that they did as well. True story. But no, seriously, biggest game of the year for the Colts coming up on Sunday, or check that Saturday afternoon. And again, it's going to be a busy day in and around downtown Indy. And you would like to think that Jonathan Taylor can come back. Now, I know that is speeding up the process, but you would like to think that because this running game has been non-existent. Now, even in a win on the road in Nashville against the Titans, but non-existent in the past 2 weeks. I'm not in the mood to say that loss in Cincinnati, was meaningless because you have a chance at a do-over. I want you to be put into the best position possible. But at the same time, this is one you can't screw up. You got T.J. Watt in the concussion protocol. You got Mitchell Trubisky as the quarterback. You've got just an awful offensive season for the Steelers. And here's what you have in the Colts. You've got a bunch of you don't know what they're going to give you. And that has been problematic. Like I mentioned, it has been an up and down roller coaster. Hopefully it's got to be up with a must-win coming up on Saturday. Hour number 2, straight ahead, Denari in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Don't go anywhere. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Want to cut heating bills without cutting comfort? Lower utility costs and enjoy warm and consistent comfort with a highly efficient furnace from Luxair. With Luxair's consumer rebate program, educators, nurses, first responders, military personnel, and veterans can enjoy exclusive rebates on qualifying purchases of Luxair equipment. To learn more, call G-Team Mechanical at 765-376-3042 or visit gteamhvac.com. They'll recommend a system tailored to your home that provides comfort, energy savings, and lasting performance.
Got a great Christmas gift-giving idea for you coming up just before we get to this holiday. I guess we're already in the holiday season, but you know what I mean. If you can't figure somebody out or you got to come up with a great gift and you know that person you're buying for is a tremendous golf fan, or maybe even it's you and you love golf, But make no mistake, that is an absolute must-win coming up this weekend. You do that, and then you've got to climb over 19 different teams that hold tie breaks and all that crap. And then, losing at home to Pittsburgh, a team with Mitchell Trubisky and the offense. You don't want to be that group. You just don't know what you're going to get for the Colts because they're so consistently up and down, which I guess if we're going to describe it that way, would be rather inconsistent. But the up and down is the consistency here because they're not that great, really not very good, but they're good enough to be where they are. You just need them to be a little bit better. Just punch your ticket to the postseason and don't worry about the matchup. And, hey, they're going to get their clocks cleaned by anybody, whatever. We'll deal with that when the time comes. And, again, if they lose – and they lose because of a myriad of mistakes, we'll be critical of that. But at the same time, you still want to see your team get to that point, especially in a season in which most people, including myself, thought that chance was absolutely out of the question. 239-1070. Ramon's going to start the 4 o'clock hour with us. Ramon, thank you for the call. How are you?
How you doing, JMV? And thanks for taking my call.
You got it,
summed it up pretty good. We saw what happened last night. I lost both of those, man. I was sick this morning. You saw what happened. People, listen, anything can happen. You can't take – I went to the Tampa Bay game. I thought that defense harassed Baker Mayfield. Yeah. It was beautiful to see. The Tennessee game, I thought they performed. I knew the Cincinnati game would be trouble because
they're better. They're better. Yeah, they're better in general.
Better. And once the team gets confidence, you know that. You've watched forever. Once a team gets confidence, you'll know what can happen. They cannot mail anything in. Just like I kind of was a little perturbed at Myles. They like the Counties, but to sit here and say, well, we was in the game. We weren't playing our best game. You're not that good. You cannot sit. You have to play your best game at all times because we're seeing Denver getting their clocks clean right now. And look, they pulled out a lucky game last night against Atlanta because they kicked out Trey Young. But they've been getting their clocks clean, too. It's a lot of parity. There's an open window in all of these sports right now. You're right. The Pacers got to make a move. The Colts, I'm looking at next year-ish, year after maybe.
But while you're sitting there, you might as well be a part of something. That's what I'm saying.
You might as well be a part of it. You might as well be a part of it because anything can happen. Last night, just let's say, I tore my ticket up this morning. So anything can happen.
Are you talking about your betting ticket? Is that what you're bringing up here?
Yeah, that game, those 2 games last night.
What game screwed you up on your betting ticket? You mentioned Denver and Atlanta?
Miami and Green Bay, both of them.
Oh, both the football games. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about NBA.
Both the football games did me in. That's what I'm saying. I figured I mailed those in.
Yeah.
And look what happened.
Mike McDaniel had to go to sometimes games like these can be galvanizing for the team, and really you don't know if they can. So you don't. You just because and it's easier to say that when you know that you have that level of offensive talent out there. But, yeah, that's a tough one to have at home. Thank you, Ramon. I appreciate that. Yeah, Miami-Tennessee last night was a tough one for the Dolphins to have. But they're in a different spot than a lot of other teams. You know that your offense is really good. So you can talk about how a loss like that can be galvanizing. Now, most people would talk about, if you're in a different market, let's just say, for example, if this is Philadelphia, they're not talking about how that loss can be galvanizing. They're ripping the Eagles for that loss. Just like they did when San Francisco did in the Eagles at home. Now, last night was a little bit weird on Monday night. I watched the Pacers and then flipped over and kind of went back and forth a little bit. I wasn't that much intrigued by either of the matchups. But I did probably watch more Giants and Packers than anything else. The DeVito story is pretty interesting, but it is a New York area level of interest. It is certainly, sure as hell, not a level of interest around here. We were talking to Myles Turner a little bit earlier, and this is one of the points on Saturday. He mentioned just the frustration that he had in that game and why he walked to the tunnel to get composure and then walk back. And you look at that game as you would love to have seen them be much better, be more competitive down the stretch, and certainly from Myles' standpoint and what you saw from the Lakers, certainly be a hell of a lot more competitive. But the one thing you did not want to see was this team load up, go to Detroit, and then fall flat against that Pistons team last night. You did not want to see that. And I went to that first Pistons game, and there were some similarities last night in Detroit to that matchup a couple of weeks ago. I believe a couple of weeks ago, that was on the Saturday after Black Friday. It was on Thanksgiving weekend on that Saturday. But one of the things that stood out to me about that was, you had Jaden Ivey, who I think really his past two games, I'd have to look even more in depth, but certainly he's had two games that have been good for him against this Pacers team. But there were a lot of things like that first meeting that they had a couple of weeks ago that I'm talking about. It was a late game, a fourth quarter surge that got them by. And last night, it was a fourth quarter surge that got them that win. And I'm all for it, too. I am all for watching this team grow. And I for one, was incredibly happy to watch Benedict Mathurin have the game that he had last night. It is still an incredible work in progress. But you could tell that guy needed a game like that, and here's how you can tell. You can tell that because his teammates were happy that he had a game like that. More consistent and necessary is what you are looking for from him. I'm not suggesting he's going to give you 30 and 7 and 8 assists every single night. But more consistent than he has been, that's exactly what you're looking for. So if there were a couple of things last night that left you with a positive impression, one was when everybody called it a trap game, when everybody said there was going to be a letdown, and everybody mentioned it was going to be a natural letdown. My viewpoint was I want to see these guys go out there and show their professionalism. And that's what we talked about with Myles a little bit earlier, the fact that you go there and know that it's not the same. You know it's not the glitz and glamour of Vegas. The spotlight's not on you like in Vegas. You have to go out here and be a professional team and get that win. That's what they did. Mathurin 37-8 last night. Pacers on the road in Milwaukee coming up tomorrow night. The Bucks are going to want a little bit of piece of the action tomorrow night without question. By the way, if you missed Myles Turner earlier, that podcast is at 1075thefan.com. All right, 239-1070. Jonathan is up next today. Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm great. How about yourself?
Fantastic. What's up?
Your question was interesting about the non-existent run game lately. I was thinking I've seen a change in the offensive line. I actually think that's to blame.
Yeah,
and
it was a problem on
understand.
Sunday. There's no doubt about it. Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was against Tennessee too, and honestly, it's happened a lot this year, including during the winning streak. When it started against like Carolina and New England. Last year they were terrible at pass protection, and this year for some reason it looks like it's kind of flipped, even with the same personnel. I just wanted to know your thoughts on why they're not even doing as well running the ball this year compared to last year.
I don't know if it is the lack of consistency as of late, because most of the time I think we're pretty happy with the O-line's performance. But you just kind of question. I guess I more question that and how good they were last weekend. I don't know if that was because the Bengals up front played so well, but the problem that you have, Jonathan, is the Bengals consistently have not been good this season against the run.
No, they haven't.
And we thought that's what they're going to
be.
be able to attack. But I also think, and even beyond the offensive line and their consistency of not playing to the level in which we've seen so far this year, there is still the magnitude of losing your game-breaking guy, and that's Jonathan Taylor. We knew that was coming. And you got bits and pieces of Zach Moss doing well earlier this season. But with due respect, he's not Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor, in a win and in a loss, has certainly been a significant missing piece.
Yeah, Moss's numbers are actually better in terms of consistency and like average yards per carry. I was just I know that other teams are going to try to copy what the Bengals did against us. That would be the main danger, even if we're the favored, better team and stuff. It says, for example, they had a flanker in the backfield to keep us from sacking. Well, if our defense doesn't sack, they're just bad. And I think Gus Bradley is just not willing to blitz as much as necessary. So that's part of what takes the run game away from us anyway, is that we're getting burned by the pass, and we can't run anymore, even if we wanted to,
Well, my hope is, and I know that's the hope of this team, that Jonathan Taylor is back. I don't know if he's going to be back this weekend or not, but, man, it'd be a fine time for him to be back, because you just can't with this team.
3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, and you can't lose the level of that player, the threat of that player. That changes so much, and we've definitely seen that in the past couple of weeks. Jonathan, anything else?
No, that was my thought. I don't think that Taylor ever looked rusty or slow at any point. I think he just hasn't had enough daylight, and that's kind of what I'm disappointed about with the front five, the offensive line. But thanks for the time.
You got it. Jonathan, thank you very much. Part of the issue is this team just cannot do things well that takes the defense away from stacking up and not even worrying about passing going down the field. I mean, we're talking about Gardner Minshew, and while he's managed things to this point and he has put this Colts team in a position to be playoff worthy, not being able to get down the field has, and probably will be, if they don't make it to the postseason, as significant of a reason why as he has been to put this team in this position in the first place. And I know that nobody wants to say, well, it's not Minshew's fault. Everybody, and I understand that. But if the other team's defense is not at all worried about a passing game or anybody getting past them, then the run is even more difficult. And then the run is made more difficult because you don't have Jonathan Taylor available. If there is one asset that concerns you about Saturday, and again, that's if T.J. Watt is out there and playing, if there is one game breaker with this Steelers team, and again, I would also remind you that regardless of the situation, the Steelers over many years now for the Colts have been an absolute pain in the ass. Regardless. And with this Colts team, you can't look at anything as an absolute. You'd like to be able to. You'd like to be able to say, this is what we're going to get out of this group right now, so you feel really good about them winning. But face it, when you mark it down, and I can say this every single Friday, because I make my picks on Thursday, and then they ask for them, I think, here to put them up on the website and up on social on Friday. When I make my picks, I can't remember a time when I felt solid in terms of picking the Colts. There's just always a tremendous question mark as to what you're going to get and what you're going to see. And that, again, is because they're simply put not any good. They're in a good situation for this team and the way this season played out. And certainly, surprisingly enough, but this team is average at best. I'm not suggesting take it and run with it and have fun, because you deserve that around here. You've been through too much crap, for me to try to take that away from you. But there are just some things where this offense would work out better, and you start with just being able to get down the field, to being a threat. And Michael Pittman Jr. has been really good. But they're loaded up on that. He goes, 8 yards, maybe a catch, probably less than that. Everything is underneath, and there is just no legitimate down the field, no legitimate outside threat. And this Colts offense and its quarterback, if you were able to do that, take the top off and be more of a threat and something that a defense had to really concern itself with, then that would be different. But right now it's not. And again, you saw a Cincinnati defense that has not been good against the run this year, a Cincinnati defense that stifled the Colts last week, regardless of the circumstances. And I know a lot has been said about this being a do-over, or if you're going to lose a game, you can lose that one. And certainly Cincinnati with the skill position players were a hell of a lot better than anything over this win streak prior to that the Colts have seen. But at the same time, you look at the numbers and the guys we thought on Sunday that would be instrumental in beating the Colts or could have been instrumental in beating the Colts, it really wasn't about that. It is more about a screen game, and it was more about really they did some things that you would like to see consistently in what the Colts hope to get out of Gardner Minshew. And then in return, the Colts defense did not make anything other than maybe in that second quarter with that pick six. Nothing really uncomfortable for a backup quarterback, which in large part is exactly what you're looking for under those circumstances. It simply put didn't happen. Now, again, much better team. Much better team than what you've seen. I mean, even with that win last night in Miami, I mean, Cincinnati and their skill position players, better than what you saw in Nashville against Tennessee. No doubt better than Tampa. No doubt better than Carolina. Better than New England. So I didn't look at it as much as, a chance to, well, you know what, forget about that and move on. You're forced to move on because now, if you're thinking in terms of must-wins coming up on Saturday afternoon, this is absolutely it. There is no doubt. I mean, defensively, there is zero concern about the Colts being able to go down the field. So it is a variety of ways you're going to be able to play the run and stifle the run. And then you just live with Michael Pittman Jr. being Michael Pittman Jr. Yeah, you just think about that, too, offensively, what the Colts did not get done last weekend. And something that absolutely cannot happen coming up on Saturday. We can hit that if you like, and again, a little collegiate conversation if you guys want to get there. Purdue and Arizona, that's coming up on Saturday afternoon. Really, 4:30 on Peacock. So, Boilermaker fans, I'm assuming you guys are dialed in with Peacock? Who's doing that game? Is that a Collinsworth-Bardo thing? Because that's who did IU and Michigan last week for Peacock. So, Peacock. I'm assuming Peacock for Ball State and Indiana State, too, right? They televise both games? My Sycamores? Hey, by the way, Michael Lewis will join us on the show coming up tomorrow. And I probably should get Josh Schertz back on here of Indiana State at some point later on this week, too. But I had to put out the bat signal for those. And again, as Greg Rakestraw mentioned a little bit earlier this afternoon, that event, the Indy Classic at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, is sold out as of right now. I think last week for Michigan and IU, it was Jack Collinsworth and Stephen Bardo. Is that who you got on Saturday?
Looking it up, both games are on Peacock.
Yes.
Noah Eagle.
Noah Eagle. That's Ian Eagle's son. I like Noah Eagle. I'm a big Eagle fan. I love the Eagle family.
Friend of the show, Robbie Hummel. And Carolyn Pineda.
Nice. We got to dial up. I haven't had the Eagle son on here. I need to get the Eagle son on here. Hey, text James and see if he can get a hold of Ian, who can get a hold of Noah, who can call in the show later on this week.
On it.
The Eagle son, Noah. You know what's going to make me ill about that? What is he, about 22 years old or something? He's better than every one of us. It's every last one of us. Outstanding. Yeah, make sure James gets that. Go ahead.
26, same age as me.
26?
Noah Eagle.
God, he is better. Better than all of us right here. Good Lord. And Hummel as well. So Peacock for you Boilermaker fans. And by the way, too, and I don't say this very often because it's actually on a different station, but he is such a friend of mine and friend of the show. You obviously got the voice of the Boilermakers, Rob Blackman. That is always a good listen right there. But that should be fun. Arizona and Purdue should be an absolute blast. Tommy Lloyd is a guy that I like watching him coach, because watching him and knowing him being a part of Gonzaga for such a long time, I remember seeing him on the sideline, and I know Arizona was already a brand name in college basketball, but he has taken his philosophy of how he and they handled things while at Gonzaga to Arizona, and that has worked out fantastically so far. Caleb Love, the former Carolina guard, is their leading scorer at over 14 points a game. 4:30 coming up on Saturday. Man, two things going on at the same time. A little back nine after that with the Center Grove 8th grade girls.
I haven't been to back nine yet.
Back nine's awesome. Not been there?
Not yet. Topgolf I've been.
Back nine, I'm going to tell you this. If you go to back nine, I can tell this. Shout out to Downey Hayes, by the way, who's out there listening too. Back nine, this is the best of the best. If you get on the third level, like right in the middle on the third level, you got a backdrop of downtown Indy. It looks outstanding.
Ooh, I'm going to have to go.
It is nice. Love back nine. The 8th grade Center Grove girls. Yeah, if you guys want to join us after the game on Saturday, go ahead. Go ahead and join us over there. It'll be a party. Going to unleash. But now, seriously, big Saturday coming up around here. All right, quick break, and we shall return. Chris Denari is going to join us. Speaking of really good numbers for people watching the Pacers, and especially the semifinals and the final this past Thursday and Saturday out in Vegas. The numbers for the in-season tournament, the first of its kind, no doubt successful for the NBA. And we mentioned, too, incredibly successful for the Pacers. I mean, getting that relative unknown brand out there for everybody to see. And even with that disappointment of Saturday, getting that brand out there was good for the Pacers. But the numbers were good. The numbers were good nationally, and the numbers were good around here. So well done. Quick break. We'll come back. Chris Denari is going to join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Greg Rakestraw a little bit earlier. And Myles Turner of the Pacers podcast, 1075thefan.com. Michael Lewis of Ball State tomorrow. See if he can track down Noah Eagle. We've never had Noah Eagle on. We've had Iron Eagle on a ton. We can't get Noah on before that Peacock extravaganza on Saturday down at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And Bobby Marks of ESPN, what makes sense to him that the Pacers can do? Because I think it's clear they're going to do something, but what makes the most sense, whether you're talking about Siakam, whether you're talking about Anunoby, or maybe somebody else's name that is out there, what makes the most sense? Bobby Marks of ESPN, we'll talk about that coming up on tomorrow's show. Quick break, back with you on the other side. Inside the Lounge via YouTube Live, the stream, the app, HD Radio, and 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. from Vegas, who was outstanding. And then a little bit earlier, Myles Turner, podcast 1075thefan.com, which was good. Kurt, you going to be glad to get the hell out of Dodge here after today? You getting sick and tired of running this thing?
I already got a rundown for James. We're in a new studio, and I take over for him, and he skips town and goes on vacation. So
no, he's going to have to acclimate a little bit, too. I think we were in here
last Wednesday.
Yeah, last Wednesday, and that was it.
Yep.
And then I'm out on the road. By the way, too, both Thursday and Friday, this is weird. I don't think it's ever happened this way. Whiskey Business, Pendleton Pike, that's coming up on Thursday. Larceny Bourbon Locks and Luna Azul Tequila Shots. And then Whiskey Business South off of Southport Road, that is coming up on Friday, on a Bud Light Blue Friday with Steelers Colts tickets. I don't think it's ever worked out that way. It may have been close in the past with Joe's Grill, but I don't think we've ever been in 1 week in back-to-back days at two different locations of the same place. So hopefully I see you at both. We'll cover you on the northeast side, Northsiders, and we'll cover you on the south side. But, yeah, Skivvy's getting back to you. I don't know if that was the key or not. This is from RD, and you're right. I saw this a little bit earlier. Courtesy of David Lindquist, we've got some good shows in and around the area. And, again, these announcements are coming up right now. And I'm going to add this one to the list. It's Bad Religion and Social D. That's Social Distortion. And I believe we gave away Social D. We'll have tickets to give away for that, too, that particular show. I think that's at the White River State Park coming up this summer. But Social Distortion, the last time we gave away tickets for them, I think that ended up canceled because of COVID. So, Mike Ness and the guys are back coming up. Bad Religion, Social Distortion. And Artie says, I won tickets from your show to see Social D a while back. My hearing still hasn't recovered. You actually went. I thought one was canceled because of COVID. But I've not seen, I think Bad Religion was something I'd been a part of, a festival or something before. But I've never seen to this point Social Distortion, and that is going to be a summertime extravaganza right there for me. Good shows. Denari, top of the hour, 239-1070. Friend of the show from inside the lounge via YouTube Live and the JMV Takeover. My man J-Law is on the horn right here. Hello, J-Law.
Hey, JMV, how are you?
Are you missing the JMV Takeover every Saturday night?
Absolutely. I'm having withdrawal.
Me too.
Don't know what
a little bit.
Myself.
How many weeks has it been? This is the fourth week coming up, right? We've been down 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yep. Just calling in. I went to the Colts Bengals game with Litzy.
Yes.
On Sunday, and besides going down to Litzy and his friends at tailgate and meeting Icky Woods, it was a miserable day as a Colts fan.
No wonder you sound like you do. By the way, right now, so. You sound like you hung out this weekend outside at games with Icky Woods and Litzy. That's what you sound like.
Too, so it wasn't the smartest move.
Yeah, you sound like you've hanging out. No, so for a Colts fan, it wasn't any fun, but I bet the day itself was a pretty good time.
Oh, it's fun. And if I hear Who Day one more time, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah. You know what? In J-Law, it makes it even worse when your team with all but like 2 minutes of real time are just out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I missed one of them because I was in the bathroom.
Well, I mean, that's all it takes. I mean, you go take a whiz or something like that, and you miss both scores. That's how quickly it was. And I'm talking about real time, not clock time in the stadium, but real time.
Yeah, I missed the touchdown, and then I saw the interception, so that was pretty cool. But, yeah, stadium's never been – the stadium's really nice, but I prefer Lucas Oil and the scene around it. But it was a good time. All the fans were nice, and you could have your – obnoxious ones like we do, but it was the Bengals fans treated everybody with pretty good respect and had a real good time tailgating with everybody.
Did you do some Cincinnati things while you were there?
No, we just went down, hung out at I think it was Big Jim's or Jungle Jim's tailgate.
Oh, and like the Jungle Jim's, the supermarket tailgate?
And maybe
what?
Big Jim's. I'm not sure who the guy. There's a guy that has a huge van with Kenny Anderson's picture on the side of the Bengals helmet.
I'm going to tell you what, if it was I love Jungle Jim's. One of the best places in Cincinnati, outside of, going to watch the Reds, for example. are going to the Cincinnati Zoo. And I think Jungle Gyms is probably even higher on the list than the Cincinnati Zoo.
But yeah, it was a good time. They tailgate well, and nice stadium. It's outdoors. I prefer the indoors, but especially in weather like that. But all in all, it was a game that you just write off and move forward.
Well, you got to now, because then you look at coming up on Saturday. This is absolute must-win situation here. I mean, you screw yourself. And now, we mentioned, you go back a couple of weeks after that Tennessee win, you have slotted the Colts in to the expectation of going to the postseason. It's not just some little pipe dream that could happen. You know what? We probably should have never put the expectations up there because, frankly, this team is not good enough for expectations. But we did, and to me, that really made last Sunday even more disappointing. But again, Cincinnati is much better, especially at certain positions, than any of the teams the Colts faced in winning during that win streak. So
the one thing I didn't understand on defense was how they got beat on that dump screen. I mean, it's over and over. Repeat.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny, too. So it looked like Jake Browning was a little bit shook, right before the half. And that pick six for Ronnie Harrison Jr., it looked like he was a little bit shook, and you thought, wow, they're going to come out in the third quarter, and you felt really good about it. And then Cincinnati went right back to the same thing. Right back to the same thing that, for whatever reason, the Colts defense or Gus Bradley or somebody just could not diagnose and find any sort of solution of. It was incredible.
No, but it was a good time, all in all.
J-Law, sooner rather than later, we'll be back with the JMV Takeover on New Year's Eve.
I think I'll be there with Litzy on Thursday if all works out.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be up at Whiskey Business on Pendleton Pike with us.
Yeah, I got to try to, yeah, and I think Litzy is as well.
All right, buddy. Good to see you.
All right, take care.
I can't wait.
Bye-bye.
That's my man J-Law right there. Yeah, Litzy's a wild man. Cincinnati Jungle Gyms. You guys know what I'm talking about? You been to Jungle Gyms? What's the best part of Jungle Gyms over there for you? The seafood area, to me, is what I like the best. Big on seafood. What do you guys got?
He's got the special drinks they got, the meats, the special drinks they all got there. I agree with that, actually. Yeah.
The meats. I like they got a seafood section that is absolutely incredible.
I think he was referring to something called Bengal Jim's Tailgate. Bengal Jim's Tailgate.
Bengal Jim's Tailgate.
It's a popular thing I looked up.
I tell you what, though, I'd go to Jungle Jim's Tailgate before I'd go anyplace else. No question about that. Hey, JMV, I think you're absolutely right. We did put expectations on this team after that Tennessee win and during the win streak that were probably very unrealistic. I've said this before. In a season like this, other than, some of the players you want to see get better, other than making sure that Chris Ballard absolutely knows what needs to be done and then does it in the offseason, it's not like Gardner Minshew is going to be at all your guy for the future. I'm assuming he's going to remain the backup. And I hate to use these terms because I know everybody does. It's like when people constantly use the word narrative that I hate and I never use. When they use the cliche playing with house money, while I don't like it and I haven't said it yet, that is the situation. Those are the circumstances. So you look over that win streak and then you look at the competition, and the competition wasn't any good. And then even with a backup quarterback, last week you get a team that is without Joe Burrow, which will take it down a peg to being a Super Bowl contender, but still really on both sides of the football. I mean, up front, they've got difference-making guys out there. And then you had a quarterback that was feeling good after that Monday night win and really, for whatever reason, was felt to remain completely comfortable out there in all but a late second quarter situation, which, as we talked about going into the game on Sunday, that is something that you want to do. I remember talking on the Colts pregame huddle right here, and Rick Venturi was on here with us, and he said, hey, you've got to make this guy feel incredibly uncomfortable. Because we watched what took place on Monday night in Jacksonville, and, I mean, he was coming off a huge game. He put up Burrow numbers. And really only one time did they make him at all, really late in the second quarter, feel uncomfortable. But we probably were way, way too big a hurry to put expectations on it. But really, I don't care. I don't care what path you take right now because, again, this is not how under center it's going to be. Hopefully it's not going to be in the future. If it is this way in the future, then everything is FUBAR, especially with the quarterback. But this is not how it's going to be for the future. But as I've mentioned, if you're going to be here, you might as well try to take as much advantage of it right now. And I know people don't want to hear that. People want to have those expectations, and then we put expectations on them. They go to Cincinnati, which is a much better team, and they fail miserably on Sunday. But no doubt that things are right in front of them and things are doable. But I think oftentimes we forget that that's exactly how the other team is feeling right now. That's how the other team is thinking right now. Derek White says, did you run off another PFF person? I have not. I've run off 3 in my existence here. Saying nerded up and such. But no, he's cool, right? He was just off? All right. Yeah, Derek, I think Spielberger just had something else to do today. But I did not run him off. I think I've run off three guys so far. I'm not proud of it. I should be better than that. All right, quick check that. Jeff, before the break here at 239-1070. Jeff, welcome to the show.
House money? Is that what you really think of the Colts this year?
I don't know how else to look at it. What are you thinking about?
I mean, I kind of heard you guys kind of have this attitude about 4 weeks ago. Their schedule sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Well, they kind of do too. Yeah.
Huh?
They kind of do too. They're not that great.
No, wait a second. No, wait a second. So you think they suck? Their offensive line's better than it was last year.
I think that they're average. I think that they're average at best.
There's not a great team in the NFL other than probably the Niners anyway.
Right.
I mean, and you saw that last week by Baltimore coming back. I mean, so, I don't know.
No, Jeff.
I think a lot more of these guys. I think the receivers have gotten better. I think their defense is a top 10 defense. I think some of it has to do with the games that they sit back and they don't blitz, which was Jacksonville and this game. They get blistered. Why you don't put pressure on some of these quarterbacks is beyond me. Most of these good teams, they'll play some one-on-one. I get it. The Bengals got some really good receivers, but they're better than what everyone gives them credit. So,
hey, I will say this. We're on the same page in our thinking here. I said, while you're here, take advantage of it. And that's what you're saying with the schedule. But I'm also saying the moment you put expectations on this group is the moment you're going to fail, because also on this schedule, they can lose it to any of these teams because of the reasons you just magnified.
Yeah, I just think they're a lot better. I think they were better last year. I agree with you. Their receiving corps stunk last year. Their offensive line struggled. Their defense was about as good as any defense last year, but they couldn't do anything offensively. Now they've got some offense. They've got some weapons. Pierce is coming around. The number 1 guy's doing good. They just are not that far off. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I put them $100 to win the Super Bowl. It wasn't to win the Super Bowl. It was to get in the playoffs, and then I could hedge my bets the rest of the way. If they don't make the playoffs, it is an epic fail. I don't care how house money it is. Their schedule is putrid. You've got Pittsburgh coming in that I don't think Pickett's going to play. And you got the Raiders that have nothing to play for anymore. I mean, the Houston game will be a tough one, but I'm sorry, but if they don't make a playoffs, epic fail.
And thank you. Yeah, Jeff, I got to hit a break. Thank you for the call. You're not wrong about being disappointed out of it. I agree with you on that. I just don't hold this team top to bottom in as high regard as you do. I think they're just as capable of losing to Mitchell Trubisky on Saturday as they are beating Mitchell Trubisky on Saturday. And the same holds true for the Raiders and for the Falcons and certainly for the Texans. For all the reasons that you just explained, they are good enough to be a part of this right now. But there's nothing that really stands out about this group. And the moment that it does, you probably factor in that it's going to go away. That's normally how it happens. But, yes, are you right? It is definitely winnable. Quick break. We shall return top of the hour. Chris Denari. The great numbers this past week and certainly in Vegas for that first in-season NBA tournament. Chris Denari will talk about that. Last night in Detroit, preparation for Milwaukee. Myles Turner earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Back with you next.
The Speed.
Anybody out here, two things for you. And this is just for personal usage for me here. Anybody out there anybody out there a fan of Stranger Things? All right, my daughter's a big fan. Any of these Stranger Things people on Cameo that I could pay to get them to do a message? I don't know. I've never watched it. It looks fun, and certainly I've always loved the song Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and that was made incredibly famous the summer before last because of Stranger Things. Even more famous than when it came out in 1986. Always been a great song. And it's interesting, too. It was Running Up That Hill, Make a Deal with God back in 1986, and they eliminated Make a Deal with God because they didn't want God to be on there with Running Up That Hill. Stranger Things, and everybody says, man, why don't you watch this? It's right up your alley. I never have. Are any of those characters on Cameo?
There's quite a few on here. There's one that can be just for you.
Yeah.
Sean Astin, Rudy.
Oh, yeah.
He's on Stranger Things.
Okay.
He's a $500 cameo.
$500 for Sean Astin?
Yeah.
Sean Astin's been on this show before, by the way. Yes.
But he's on Stranger Things, so that could work.
$500. Holy crap.
There's 24 options of actors that were on Stranger Things that have cameo.
Okay. 24 actors. I'm just trying to think. Do you guys watch it at all? All right. Hold on, guys. So my daughter says Mike Wheeler and Will Byers. Who are they? Are either one of those two on there? No idea who they are. No. Mike Wheeler, they're not?
No.
Yeah, I'm going to be host. I was trying to see if I could get a cameo with the Stranger Things to send her a message, but man, $500 for Sean Astin's a little bit salty right there, huh? Hey, by the way, Brian Evans, the former Hoosier from Aurora Sleep Clinic, last year had Greg Brady, Barry Williams, send me a cameo message. Shout out still for that amazing moment, courtesy of Brian Evans. All right, Denari on the other side. Pacers a winner last night. Myles Turner joined us a little bit earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. We'll talk about that and then talk about the success, even with that finals loss on Saturday in Vegas to the Lakers, that success for the Pacers and a team obviously lurking and motivated tomorrow night in Milwaukee. Chris Denari, Bally Sports, Indiana, and you. Other side next.
The speed, the power, the high-octane fury, and it's not even May.
Beautiful play. Halliburton slams it with two hands. Where he
And Bill Polian got a load of that. And at the time, Bill Polian was on weekly with Mark Patrick. And I was the producer and operated the board at the time for Mark Patrick on sports. And that was at the other station. And at the end of, I think he came on, I can't remember if it was every Monday or Tuesday, because if you remember back on Monday nights, Bill Polian had his own show, the Bill Polian Show, which was always really must listen. But Mark had just kind of mentioned to Bill what was said on the Jim Rome Show and said, hey, if we can get you together with Jay Moore, would you come on here and do a segment? And Bill said yes. And I'd set it up in Southern California to get Jay Moore on, and he came on the same time as Bill Polian came on. And as Bill Polian was incredibly prepared, and it was 17-plus minutes of the most incredible radio. And I'm not afraid to tell you, in the history of this market, and I don't care if we're talking about news, I don't care if we're talking about sports, the most entertaining and compelling 17-plus minutes we have heard. And again, in terms of talk radio, it was flooring. And I'm right there a part of it. But that was on this date in 2001. And what's interesting is, like, years later, I'll get bits and pieces. Craig Kelly was the longtime media guru for the Colts, and he came on with me once and said, and this was maybe the greatest part. He said that Bill was screaming at Jay Moore, and he's on a landline in his office. And Craig knew that this was going too far. And Craig was trying to hang up the phone. Bill had, and this is great, if you're watching me via YouTube Live, you can see me kind of doing this right now. Bill had the phone, the receiver, in his left hand and was fighting Craig Kelly off with his right forearm because Craig was trying to hang up the phone. Craig said, you know what, we can't do this anymore. This is going to be really bad. Craig was trying to hang up the phone, and Bill Polian was fighting him off, literally, with his right forearm. And then 2 years ago, I talked to Chargers general manager Tom Telesco. Tom Telesco at the time for the Colts, and obviously he was here for a while, but at the time he was an intern for the Colts. He was actually in the office, and if you go back to that interview, told us that he was absolutely in shock about what was going on. Could not believe what was going on, and also told us that it was true that Bill was fighting off Craig Kelly with his right forearm while screaming at Jay Moore during this interview. Incredible to this day. On this date in 2001. Myles Turner a little bit earlier, Greg Rakestraw also a little bit earlier. Tomorrow, Bobby Marks of ESPN, considering the Pacers' options, most available options, and what makes the most sense. Bobby Marks tomorrow. Michael Lewis, the head coach of Ball State's coming up on the show tomorrow too. So be ready for that. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, ready to go in Milwaukee with a day off with the Pacers. Pacers Television, Bally Sports, Indiana. Pacers Milwaukee tomorrow night. Pacers a win over the Pistons last night. Chris Denari joins us. Were you listening live to the Polian Moore thing back in 2001?
Absolutely. I remember exactly where I was. I was the sports marketing communications director for Methodist Sports Medicine. And the doctors, it's now Forte Sports Medicine, they take care of the Colts. And I was sitting in my office in Carmel, always listening to the show. And you're right, the 22 minutes, it was remarkable radio. I mean, people were walking by that, and people had their jaws dropping. It was, and it's interesting because you bring up Tom Telesco, his wife, Lara. She was my creative director at the ad agency we worked with. So I had all these relationships, and it was unbelievable radio. Unbelievable.
And what people sometimes forget about, and I bring it up right now because we lost a really good friend of ours in Ron Sexton this past summer. And Ron and I were in there together. And remember, that was back in the time where Drew Storen, Mark Patrick's son, was, I think, in 6th grade and playing basketball, and he had a game, and Mark was going to leave anyway in the 5 o'clock hour. So Mark left. Ron came in with me, and it was portrayed by the news stations around here that Mark was taken off the air, but Mark actually was going to watch Drew play 6th grade basketball. The best part about it is Ron and I were like talking back and forth about this, and all of a sudden the hotline rings, and I put it through, and it's Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning, I've always laughed about this. Peyton Manning said, "Hey, fellas, how you doing? I was just driving around listening and thought I could add a little bit to the conversation."
I mean, that's Peyton, right? I mean, Peyton always, to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember covering him, and, when I was at 59, and he knew everything that was going on.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that he would call in and probably – in some ways, a comedic way as well, right? Yeah, I thought I'd call in and see how you guys are doing today.
Yeah, and obviously they called him and said, "Hey, you need to save this situation as much as possible right here." And then he spent about 20 minutes, and it was 20 minutes of talking about Bill and what Bill has meant and then currently means to the organization, and why Bill felt compelled to do what he did with Jay Moore. And that was all started, if you remember, from Drew Rosenhaus, who represented Edgerrin James. And it all started right there with him. And then Jay Moore went on Jim Rome's show. And again, I said at that moment, I'll never be around anything like that again. And I haven't. It was an amazing radio day.
Yeah, it's what you say. It's the beauty about what you guys do. I mean, the opportunity, I was listening earlier today with Myles. I mean, you're able, from a radio perspective, to have people on for a long time.
Yeah.
And no question. I knew that it was about this time. I didn't realize this was the anniversary day of 22 years ago when that radio interview went down.
It was craziness. People are asking me if it's available. I know this. I'm assuming that they still have that somewhere over at what is it now at iHeart. I'm assuming they still have it at iHeart someplace, but I know Mike Chappell has it on cassette somewhere because he was taping it as it was going down live. I would love to hear how that sounds. Seriously, because over the radio he has that taped.
Yeah, I mean that would be one of those things that you would have, like if it's in storage. You'd have it locked up to make sure, cassette tapes can lose themselves
right.
over time. You'd have to make sure you had that in an area that can't get any dampness or wetness, because you want to preserve that thing as long as you can.
It's Chris Denari. Thanks for sharing that too, because again, we were both kind of early stages. I was really, really early stages, and to get thrust into that was absolutely incredible. And knowing that was today, and you know what else? That is again a magnifier to how disappointing seasons when you have expectations can end up going. And that's how haywire things can go, just like that.
And yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing that you can study or that you can do that would prepare you for, what you have to do in that situation. It reminds me, the whole different scenario, a number of years ago, we go to New Orleans to do a game, and it's raining in the building.
Yeah.
And we have to prepare to talk through that situation. Anthony Davis was on New Orleans, and, he's like, "Hey, I'm not going to go out there with the floor." I mean, just like you guys, nobody can prepare you for sitting in the studio and go, "This is what's going to happen today." How do you respond to that?
It's Chris Denari with us. I'll get to Detroit in a second. I do want to double back to Saturday. And regardless of that loss, and was it disappointing? Absolutely, to the Lakers. And we talked to Myles about that and how disappointed he was and obviously what went down in that game. But all in all, you could not have asked for a better situation and better circumstances now a week later than what went down last week for the Pacers in that tournament.
Oh, no question. I mean, from a national perspective, but John, even from a local perspective, I mean, the amount of people that, may not have followed this team or watched this team all of a sudden becoming engaged in watching Pacers basketball. And, I sent you a note that, nationally, it was the highest rated non-Christmas regular season NBA game in 6 years. Did almost 5 million. I think it peaked at about 6 million. And locally, the game was over the air on Channel 6, so people had access to it with an antenna, cable, streaming, whatever. It was the 5th largest local rating for Pacers basketball in the last 18 years. So, and the other 4 of the top 5 are 3 Pacers Miami games in 2013-14. Again, these are regular season games. And then when Paul George came back with Oklahoma City in 2017. So, I think what the Pacers accomplished, though they didn't win the NBA Cup, hopefully will go a long way to what they do this season, continued interest, locally and nationally, and as they, try to build to what their goal is. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton has said that, look, we're in it to get into the playoffs. We want to build a championship team. And I just think what transpired over the last week is very, very helpful.
It's Chris Denari, the voice of the Pacers on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I also thought the way the Lakers handled things, I mean, seriously, what do they have to gain other than just winning and being a winner? Because they get all of what the Pacers and the Pacer fans have been searching for this organization. They have all of that every single day, every single week, every single month, every single season. But for them to go out there and to take it, really, and Myles and I talked about that, you could tell that they were focused in on that, especially Anthony Davis from the opening tip, that things were going to be different. And that is, and I'd ask Myles that is a level of professionalism that I think if you're the young growing Pacers, you can take away also from that experience.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you have your 2 main guys. I mean, they won a title in the bubble a few years ago. LeBron's won a title in Miami. He's won a couple in Miami, won one in Cleveland, won one with the Lakers. So you had guys that have experienced that at a high level. The Pacers have a guy in Bruce Brown who clearly won a title last year, and he's trying to, disseminate some of that information and those types of things to this young group about what it takes to play. But as a group, until you experience it, you really don't know what you're in. And so this was as close to a playoff situation as it could be. And it's even a little bit different, John, if you go back to last Monday. I mean, all of a sudden you get to the round of 8. It's like the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's win or you're out. It's not, if you lose game 1, you still have game 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just think the environment that the Pacers were able to put themselves in over the last week, and in talking to Rick Carlisle last night, he said really a big key for us was that previous Saturday game in Miami that Tyrese Halliburton did not play, and yet the Pacers put up 144 points and beat the Miami Heat after they had lost to Miami on Thursday. And he said, I really think that gave us a significant amount of momentum and some confidence going into the week. So, yeah, all of it is important. And I know we'll touch on last night. I mean, that was a difficult environment. I mean, you're talking about a team that had just come off a high. They come 2 time zones or 3 time zones to Detroit. You're playing in a half-empty building where a week ago it was a raucous crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, a team that's lost 19 in a row. They have everything to gain, and you have everything to lose. And so it was just, hey, win and get the heck out of there and get to Milwaukee. And that's what they were able to do.
That's what I told Myles. It was a professional win last night. And really, Chris, it was reminiscent of the first time the Pistons and the Pacers met a couple of weeks prior on a Saturday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It was a game that was kind of back and forth. And then in the fourth quarter, midway through, the Pacers got themselves some distance and went on to win.
Yeah, and there's enough guys in this league. I mean, you look up and down the rosters of these teams. I mean, Cade Cunningham's a really good player. I mean, Jaden Ivey's an up-and-coming young player. They've got veterans like Bogdanovich and Burks that can make shots. So you got to be very careful in these games because even the teams that have poor records, they've got good players, and they're very, very capable. And so I really thought that the end of the first half was key when they went on that 9-0 run, and then they started the third quarter, and they were able to get some space. The lead was 10. It got as close as 5. But then I thought in the fourth quarter, Tyrese, I thought he looked a little gassed throughout the night, if you think about it from a mental and a physical perspective. But he was really good in the fourth quarter. Myles was really good in the fourth quarter. And then Benedict Mathurin, he had by far, I think, the best game of his career, because it wasn't just the points. It was 8 assists. It was 7 rebounds. And I think he's getting better defensively. So all in all, it was a really good night for the Pacers to get out of there with a win.
It was, too. And Chris Denari joins us, voice of the Pacers, with Mathurin, too. It is still a work in progress, but that's the type of game that you want to see from him. And maybe not 30, obviously, and 8 and 7 or whatever it was, but more of a consistency on both ends is what you're looking for from him. I'm going to tell you what, watching he and JJ during that interview, that walk-off interview, when Jalen Smith came over and kind of did that thing to him, he had zero enjoyment in that. If you couldn't tell. It was pretty funny the way that he responds. It's like, yeah, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. Time to move on.
Yeah, he's a very serious person, let me tell you that. I mean, you see him in the hotel, you'll get him to smile. It's so good here when JJ, Ken Softman, and I got to Detroit. Of course, we weren't with the team last week. We got to the hotel Sunday night, and Ben was in the lobby area with his sister. And he is so close to his older sister. She's been great for him. She's a former college basketball player. She's always smiling. And I think that starts to rub off on Ben. He's, a little bit of a guarded person. He's very focused on his craft. I mean, did you see after he made that beautiful left-handed whip pass into Isaiah Jackson? I mean, teammates were all over him. And he broke out with a little bit of a smile. But the guy is very dedicated to his craft. He's worked really, really hard. And again, it's only game 21 of his second season in the NBA. I just think he has such an upside that we continually see it grow each and every night.
So Chris Denari, who's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, I talked to Aaron Neesmith on Friday after that Thursday win, and we were talking about just watching him. You mentioned growth, evolution, maturation. And you can watch right now, right before our eyes, him grow into exactly what is necessary for this team. You can see him just kind of evolve into that right now.
Oh, no question. And he's just an integral part of this team. So happy for him that he got the extension for 3 more years. I mean, you have to give up players to get players. But I know when I talked to Brad Stevens last year, they were high on Neesmith, but they knew to get Brogdon and now eventually Drew Holiday, you got to give up something to get something. But he's just one of those guys that it doesn't matter whether he starts, whether he comes off the bench. He's really shot the 3 well. He's 45, 46%. And he does a really good job defensively, even though he's undersized when he has to deal with Giannis. Like you'll probably see him a lot on Giannis tomorrow night or LeBron James. But, he's a guy that, again, when you went to the Ascension St. Vincent Center during the summer, which I would do on a semi-regular basis, every time I was in there, he was in there. And so he's put in an incredible amount of work and continues to get better.
Yeah, it's funny, too. We were talking defensively about his philosophy. And I had noticed in watching that game on Thursday against the Bucks that Giannis basically touched the ball 3 times, a couple of scores, but touched the ball about 3 times in the final 8 minutes. And we were talking about that. And he had mentioned that when he saw Giannis kind of run to the corner and they were leaving it up to, at times, with the ball in his hands, Damian Lillard, that he knew that, this wasn't going to be the normal Giannis threat on that particular position. And those are 2 games. In the game where Giannis scored 54, then he had 37, and you felt like the Pacers did a good defensive job last Thursday against him, where it looked like that Giannis late in the game against the Pacers got a little gassed.
Yeah, it felt like just, I was watching the game. They had some guys shooting the basketball that, honestly, the Pacers were fine with. I mean, Malik Beasley's a very capable 3-point shooter, He's better than 40%, but in a crunch time situation, when the ball is swung and it's inside the arc, maybe for a 2-pointer, I'd much rather have him shooting the basketball than, Giannis, attacking downhill, because normally Giannis is going to score and you're probably going to foul him, and he's become a much better free throw shooter. So there's a 3-point play from Giannis. So, yeah, I thought the Pacers did a really good job defensively. I think if you look back at the Boston game, we've said this, John, and Rick has said this. He goes, look, we're a work in progress. We've got to just continue to improve. And if we improve a little over time, we're going to get to the point where we want to be. I've said this, that when you're playing at the pace that the Pacers are playing at, and it's a pace that we quite frankly haven't seen in the NBA, averaging nearly 129 points per game, you're going to give up points because there are just so many more possessions in the game. So, this is not going to be a situation where they're going to hold teams to 105 or 110. They want to hold teams, 115, 117, because if you're scoring 127, 128, you're going to win by double figures. So it's those things that they need to work on. But I think in those 2 wins, and then last night in the second quarter, if you can do some damage defensively in certain key areas of the game, I think you'll be all right.
It's funny, too. It felt like a defensive win when a guy goes for 37 last Thursday. That's exactly how it felt after that game.
Yeah, no question. And tomorrow night's going to be interesting because, Milwaukee felt like they should have been in the championship game on Saturday, and the Pacers knocked them off. Lillard did not have a good game last night in their overtime win here against Chicago. He was 3 for 17 from the field. So I think, for Pacers fans, for those that maybe didn't watch last night, that you watched on Saturday night, I think tomorrow night is a must see game, because I think it's going to be really, really good. A year ago, the Pacers came into Milwaukee and snapped like a 10 or 11 game losing streak at Fiserv Forum and got the win. They had lost 11, 12 in a row to the Bucks, and I think right now the Pacers have beaten them 3 of the last 4. So should be outstanding entertainment tomorrow night on Bally Sports.
He is Chris Denari, and I know that there are incredibly bad circumstances health-wise for one of our all-time favorites around here, as a Pacer, as a Hoosier, as a Continental, as a human being, in George McGinnis. What do you remember out of George McGinnis's career, as we send out our thoughts and prayers to him right now, going through obviously a pretty dire set of medical circumstances? What's your memory of his career, where he dominated on every single level, unlike anybody has?
There's no question. My thoughts and prayers are absolutely with Big George. I remember him as a player, but what I truly remember is I was very fortunate for a couple of years when I was the voice of Butler, that our athletic director, John Perry, had gotten to know George. And he sort of threw out, George had done some TV and some radio, I think, with the Pacers.
Yeah.
But my boss threw out, he goes, would you ever consider, doing some radio or color work with us? And George did. And so for a couple of years, he was my partner on Butler broadcasts. And he was so good with my kids, my boys who were small at the time. And I think back, the very first TV game I ever did, John, was the Butler IU game 30 years ago at Hinkle. I did it with George and John Laskowski, and there's no better person that you'll ever meet. And when you see him, all these years later, you would never know what he accomplished in his career, because that just wasn't how George operated. Yeah. So just a fantastic player during his career, but more importantly, a fantastic person. And definitely my prayers are with Big George.
I'm reminded of obviously what he did here in the ABA at the beginning. I was really, really young, probably too young for that. But I was growing into 1977. I was 7 years old, and I can remember the NBA Finals where he was a part of that Sixer team that was beaten by Jack Ramsey and Bill Walton and that Blazer team in the 77 NBA Finals, and how he played, how good he was with with Julius Erving and that team of, I think Billy Cunningham at the time was the head coach of the Sixers. I could be wrong about that, but I think he was. But that kind of, I know we often look at NBA-wise ushering in, of Bird and Magic in that era, but you go back to 76 for me and the Suns and the Celtics when I was 6, or 77, and certainly 79 with Supersonics. Those finals all are incredibly memorable, and nothing more memorable than George McGinnis and Dr. J, even in a loss in that final series to Portland in 1977. It was pretty special.
Oh, no question. I mean, you bring up a lot of memories. I remember watching, I was in the mid-70s. I was late junior high into early high school. And, those memories of watching Big George and Dr. J and, all the talent that Philadelphia had. Those were some really good times. And like I said, I mean, so many memories of watching him play, but getting to know him personally. I said this, there was one year, it was early in my broadcast career with the Pacers, and it was during media day or whatever. And then I went out to Old Oakland Golf Course, and I played golf with George McGinnis and Clark Kellogg. And I'm sitting here like on one of the tees going, how did I get here?
No doubt.
I am playing golf with two just unbelievable players, but more importantly, unbelievable humans. And I go, man, I got to pinch myself because this is a moment that I'll always look back on.
I'm assuming you were like me. I was a big fan of the Sports Illustrated posters back in the late 70s and into the 80s. And I had, Walter Payton, I had Spud Webb, Dominic Wilkins, Larry Bird, and I also had a George McGinnis in a Pacers uniform. Now, the one that I can look up and Google is George McGinnis in a Sixers uniform. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I cannot find this anywhere. I don't have it any longer, but George McGinnis, it didn't say George McGinnis in his poster of the Pacers. It said Big Mac, right? Didn't it say Big Mac?
Yeah,
and I have not been able to find that. That, to me, is the vintage of the – we talk about all the time, George Gervin sitting on the ice blocks or, any of those multitude of great 80s posters. But the one that I've really tried to track down and cannot find is that McGinnis in a Pacers uniform that said Big Mac.
Yeah. Do you think you have it in your house?
No, I don't have it any longer, which is a bummer to me. But I Googled it, and normally you can find, at least some evidence of it. And all I find was that Sports Illustrated poster that says George McGinnis when he's in a Sixers uniform. And it kind of got me questioning whether or not I'm just like dreaming this or if that was actually there. But I thought that I firmly remember where it said instead of George McGinnis in a Pacers uniform, Big Mac. And I've been looking for that poster forever.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic person. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, a tremendous player, but an even better person.
All right, what time you guys hit the airwaves tomorrow night?
7:30 Indianapolis time. We're in Central Time Zone, so it's an 8 o'clock tip, 7:30, and then go to D.C. after the game, play the Wizards on Friday, and then a really good matchup with the best team that got the best record in the NBA right now, Minnesota, on Saturday night. We'll be at Target Center. So if you think about it, John, this group will have been on the road for 12 days. When we get to the weekend. I think the great way to start out, again, a lot of people were worried about last night. I was.
Yeah.
But good way to start and see what this team could do the rest of the way.
No, I was. I just wanted to see them because I think a part of their maturation and growth as a good team on the floor is handling games and situations like that, professionally speaking. And I thought they did that last night. So
yeah, and I think they're all disappointed when you look back at a number of those games. We've talked about them.
Yeah.
I mean, Portland, Charlotte, those games that are crunch time. I mean, they're 8-4 in crunch time or clutch time, and all 4 of those losses, John, are at home. And it's those games, the Chicago, Charlotte, Portland. Those were the frustrating games. But then you maybe have won some games that people didn't think you'd win. So at some point, it all evens out in the process, but I think they've learned a lot from those experiences. From a negative, you learn from adversity, But then I think they also learned a lot about them over the last week or so with the successes that they had against some really good teams.
My mom didn't get the ABC affiliate out of Terre Haute because of DirecTV and some squabble with their ownership. So I had to start out on Saturday, and then she had to watch the entirety of the game from ESPN2 with the Kevin Hart and Company experience, and it was not good. Not good at all.
Yeah, that was I saw that. I was at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday night. We had an unbelievable crowd to watch the game on the big screen. So
it was horrible.
Yeah, that would be interesting because it's more focused on Kevin Hart and his friends than the game, right?
They talked about the Sixers the entire time. They had Patrick Beverley and then 3 of the Plastic Cup boys or whatever. It was an absolute clown show. It was awful. Terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I guess to each his own. And I give it up to my mom. She's 78 years old and watched the entire thing to watch that game. And they talked over everything. You couldn't even really tell what the hell was going on. It was horrible. So, yeah.
Well, I know she enjoyed last night.
Oh, yeah.
We'll look forward to watching us tomorrow night.
You got it, buddy. I appreciate you, Chris.
All right, thanks, John.
Chris Denari, Bally Sports, Indiana. Pacers TV, the voice of the Pacers on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Somebody had asked a little bit earlier, Chad did, regarding the Bill Poley and Jay Moore anniversary of that going back to 2001. Jeff Dickerson found the audio, and I retweeted that too, or re-exed, but you have it over there too?
Yeah, I pulled it.
Do you have any bits and pieces of it?
I haven't cut it yet, but we can do that in the break.
Have you been listening to it? Is it pretty funny? I don't know if we're allowed to do it, but I don't really care. I guess it's out there now, so what are you going to do,
It's
right?
entertaining.
It is incredible. Even all these years later, entertaining. That's the anniversary today. Bill Poley and Jay Moore for 2001, and I was right in there and a part of it. It was incredible. Quick break. Back with you next.
Hey, it's Dan Dockage here. I have been on the Affinity Whole Health Testosterone Program for 10 months, and man, has it been life-changing. More energy to go out and do the things that at my age, 61 years old, I probably shouldn't be doing, like 36 holes of golf and then pickleball in a day. If you want to learn more about it, go to feelgreatindy.com and see what they can do for you. What they've done for me is they've given my active life back to me. feelgreatindy.com.
Hey, JMV here, and I got a great idea for you. the owner of the Lakers. And that was Jay Moore, the actor-comedian, back in 2001 right there. You got to find the parts where he was reading the transcript. Dan Emerson, the representation of the Colts, longtime representation, I'm assuming had to get together the transcripts of what Jay Moore and Drew Rosenhaus said on the Jim Rome show. But he started talking verbatim. You know how Jim Rome talks, Rome, buddy, epic. He started reading that verbatim, and I'm serious. I was 31 years old at the time, and I almost fell out of the chair. It was incredible. I retweeted that. If you want to find it at your leisure, you certainly can. I mean, it was so many years ago. I don't know how much it matters right now, but you're an absolute madman. Everybody that's a fan of your team right now knows you're an absolute madman. It's Jay Moore talking to Bill Polian. What part do you have right there?
You're crazy. You're insane. This is no wonder the Colts are doing so poorly. You are an absolute madman, and everyone listening to the radio knows that the general manager of their favorite team is a madman.
That's Bill. Bill's reading the transcript in the background. God, it's good. You will never, ever, ever hear anything like that. Even in this world where it seems like anything goes, you will never hear anything like that again. I mean, where anything goes. Can you imagine for a moment? You're talking about something going viral. You imagine that? I mean, everybody talks about what Aaron Rodgers says every Tuesday. That's nothing. That is nothing compared to that. Bill, Jay Moore's talking and calling him a madman, and Bill's reading the transcript in the background. If you can, I do want you to find where he is reading verbatim in reading, basically what, they're talking like Jim Rome, right? And the transcript is written in, how should I put this, in Jim Rome. It's just incredible. And I don't even know, I mentioned the part where the our friend Ron Sexton, who passed away over the summer, Ron Sexton and I took over for Mark when Mark went to watch Drew play basketball. Drew Storen, his son, played basketball at the time. I think he was a sixth grader. And all these years ago, now he's, a whiskey mogul, I should say. But he went to watch Drew play basketball, and Ron Sexton and I took over the show. And then Peyton Manning calls in. That's what I'd also want to hear, because Peyton Manning calls in on the hotline and said, I was just driving around listening, and I thought I could add to the story. And I don't think that's anywhere. But that also happened that day. But again, what is that? 22 years later? 22 years later? It still holds up today. And then some of the stories I got, as I mentioned, from, basically the point in time when that happened to those that were actually in and around it. I never knew for a number of years that Bill Polian was fighting off Craig Kelly from trying to hang up the phone. Can you imagine? I mean, Bill's got his left hand on the receiver, screaming at Jay Moore on the radio in an interview while holding off Craig Kelly, his communications specialist, as Craig Kelly was trying to hang up the phone, like holding him off with his right forearm. And I was told all that, and Craig Kelly had mentioned that, but then Tom Telesco, the general manager of the Chargers, now at the time was an intern, a football intern with the Colts. We had him on a couple of years ago, and he said, yeah, that's exactly how that went down. I couldn't believe it. That was one of the first introductions he had to the Colts, was being in that room at that time. There is never, ever going to be anything like that again. 22 years ago. Bill Poling and Jay Moore. Quick one, we'll come back. Busy day for today. Chris Denari just with us, Greg Rakestraw a little bit earlier. And to start out the show, Myles Turner of the Pacers joined us. That podcast, 1075thefan.com. We'll thank Kurt Gerald's coming up here on the other side. James returns tomorrow. We'll get Michael Lewis, the head coach of Ball State, tomorrow. Bobby Marks, just how realistic going out and getting a very good, needed piece to make this Pacer team better. As mentioned, Siakam, Anunoby, a great deal. But Bobby Marks, a former general manager of the NBA, joins us and will tell us what makes sense and what doesn't, and what would be necessary in return to get somebody to the level of that player. Bobby Marks tomorrow at 4:30. And by the way, Indiana State, I got to give you guys a shout-out. I got to get Josh Schertz back on here later on this week, too. You guys working on Noah Eagle? Because I think we have Ian Eagle all the time. We got to have his son on. Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel. Peacock on Saturday. Indiana State, Ball State, and Purdue and Arizona on Peacock. Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel on Saturday. Quick break. Back with you for a final time coming up next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The wake-up call with KB and Andy.
Bengals 34, Colts 14.
All systems failure. No semblance of a run game whatsoever. Loss in the trenches to a team that is very bad at stopping the run and stopping the pass this season. Defensively, no pass rush whatsoever.
They just didn't have it, and they just didn't have it the whole game.
The biggest clunker of the season.
The wake-up call with KB and Andy. Weekdays 7 to 10 on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It's time to celebrate the moment with a trip to Barrington Jewels and Clearwater Crossing. Give the perfect gift this year with new designs, breathtaking diamonds and gemstones, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and more. Plus, top watch brands like Rolex, Breitling, Omega, and Tag Heuer, including pre-owned for even more savings. And right now, for every $1,000 you spend, you'll receive a $100 gift card. Don't wait. Get to Barrington Jewels today. And remember, you haven't seen a diamond until you've seen a Barrington diamond.
Hey, John here. Holiday season is upon us, and fellas, let's go big on this bad boy. Seriously, let's go big and surprise her. And not only, this is kind of a secret, right? You surprise her with something fantastic, but you also get a surprise out of this, too. Smooth Seduction Satin Gift Set, courtesy of our friends at Pajamagram at pajamagram.com. Smooth Seduction Satin, silky, sensuous, designed to glide over her skin and to drive you wild. This is a fantastic gift-giving idea. So when you order today, you'll get a satin nightie, a satin robe, and a free satin eye mask, all wrapped in a satin cinch bag. It is that easy. How about that for a deluxe holiday gift-giving idea? Hurry right now, pajamagram.com, and get your order in before they're gone. And this, again, is something extra special for her and something you are going to look back and say, what a great idea this was. Smooth Seduction Satin Gift Set. Get it now before it sells out here before Christmas. Log on. Get your order now. That's pajamagram.com. Again, pajamagram.com today.
Luxair is the intelligent way to keep your home comfortable. Luxair units are designed, engineered, and assembled to last. To become a dealer, 317-926-6061.
If your car is less than 10 years old, there's likely something hidden.
House, man. He represents Edgerrin James and told me some wacky things. Turns out the Edge, with his torn ACL dude, they put him as questionable.
The anniversary of the greatest radio you will ever hear. In the past, in the present, and the future. This date, 2001. Bill Polian and Jay Moore right there. Why did they just come down here and bring me a stack of old school Playboys here? Do we know?
It's the Jeff Pigeon Memorial.
I had this Kiana Tom edition right here.
We show that. Don't open it. Don't open it.
I won't open it, but if you're watching via YouTube Live, I told you we were like maneuvering around here, and we have a new studio, and it was just delivered to me a stack of Playboys from the day. This is Kiana Tom from May 2022. There was nothing more smokedified at the time than Kiana Tom right here, by the way, too. So if you're watching via YouTube Live, I don't know.
It's going to be a flag.
Is that just me? They just bring me a stack of Playboys down here, right? Cindy Margolis. You guys remember Cindy Margolis right here, too? Here's and given the fact that he passed away in early November, this Playboy edition from March of 2001 has the Bob Knight interview. The coach lets him have it. Us too. That is from, again, March of 2001, an interview in Playboy with Bob Knight. Who else do we have here?
That is a lot of Playboys.
I know, there's a lot of Playboys. Why'd they bring them to me? Man, they just... Jamie Presley. You guys would all dig that. Ooh, the girls of the Pac-10 right here. See, they had girls of the Big Ten back in the day. Now, you can see the girls of the Pac-10, girls of the Big Ten back in the day. And I'm assuming some of those girls are probably still around here. Nikki Ziering, you remember her? Trisha Helfer? Yeah. Naomi Campbell, Adrian Curry, girls of the OC. Yeah. I don't know. They're just going through a lot of stuff around here and conveniently brought me a huge stack of old Playboys. See, it's weird, right? Because when I was like 10 years old, we had like a huge stack of old Playboys in the barn loft at my grandparents' barn in the hay bales. That's how we went back then. Thank you, Todd, for that. The huge stack of Playboy. What am I going to do with all these? Who's going to be hosting that huge stack of Playboys right here?
I think you should leave one on the chair for Andy and Kevin in the morning.
Give these away on the air or something like that? What are we doing here?
Tune in next week.
Hey, Kurt, shout out to Kurt, everybody. Kurt Geralds has been in here for the better part of the past week, in for James. James is back tomorrow from his vacation down in the Florida Keys. Man, thank you so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure coming in.
And I know that was made more difficult because of the transition we're making from studios right now, but a job well done. Everybody inside the lounge, everybody out there, shout out to Kurt Geralds for being a part of this. Absolutely fantastic. When are you back, do you know? Or do you they call you when they...
I take a year off, and then they dig me up, and I come back and do a couple shows.
Nothing wrong with that right there. But, no, you did a great job. Thank you very much. Busy show for you today, too. Greg Rakestraw a little bit earlier, a variety of things we had a conversation about, including the Forum Tip-Off Classic of this past Saturday, and some of the hotter teams to start out the high school basketball season with Greg. The podcast, 1075thefan.com. Chris Denari of Bally Sports Indiana and Pacers TV got an off day today. And Chris and Quinn and JJ and Eddie and the gang, they're in Milwaukee for a matchup with the Bucks coming up tomorrow. Myles Turner also on the show. Myles Turner, podcast 1075thefan.com. Tia Carrera edition right here. All right. Daryl Hannah. Here's one for you. A blast from the past. Anybody remember Darva Conger? Darva Conger. Was that Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? Like the first one right there? Darva Conger. Cara Monaco. Somebody from Survivor. Ooh, Carmen Electra right here. Thank you, everybody. I know we're having our Christmas party tomorrow. Is this my Christmas gift, a stack of old Playboys? You guys know me very well. Kurt, thank you again so much. Hey, we got Trackside coming up later on tonight for you. And my thanks to everybody today. And again, if you missed Myles Turner earlier, podcast 1075thefan.com. Michael Lewis, Bobby Marks, and a loaded show coming up for you tomorrow beginning at 3. Have a great night. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The speed, the power, the high-octane fury, and it's not even May.